Hello, everyone. Welcome to MacAc number 168 for July 7th, 2022. And someone has their thing playing in the background. How's everybody?
Good. Excellent.
How are you? We have Mike. I'm all right. I just, we have four, so we're in a perfect little square.
Yeah. I
better not do this then.
No, you ruined it.
Dana may be joining us later on, I think. So that
I was gonna screw everything up.
May have the symmetry.
That's okay. He can take my spot.
Mike is auctioning off his spot. Don't let Retrotech you bid because that'll just whole can of
Retrotech,
worms.
you can't afford it.
Can everybody turn their camera off for a second so we can admire this background we got going on here?
Sure,
It is
yeah.
gorgeous. Look at this.
Look at that. Isn't that pretty?
This is gonna be the whole show.
Looks like crap.
That happens to
It's an
be,
audio-only podcast.
That's the lid of my Macintosh 2CI, which is very has not been retro brighted, but is still grey, still platinum color.
No retro bright.
Yes, indeed. Yes.
I should say I'm a little disappointed that the picture was not like. See, the lines are a little crooked.
I know. It's because I took it with my phone, and it's got the wide angle, and so it's
Amateur hour. Seriously.
I couldn't be bothered pulling out my SLR. So, dear. And we're notable absent tonight. GT not feeling particularly well, so he's not joining us. And of course, Grudy generally not sure what day of the week it is, so not yet at the moment.
Oh goodness!
I'm sure he probably thinks it's Tuesday.
Yeah, probably. And we'll get a message a few hours after the show going, "Oh, sorry guys. I need to take a call. Sorry, bear with me a minute."
No worries, Bruce.
Look what I got in the mail today.
Well, let's see.
Garth sent me a
Oh.
present.
Is that the one that he was cursing at?
Yep.
Oh,
And at first, I got it, and I was sitting here, and I look at it and said, I can't see anything wrong with it. So I messaged him. I said, hey, where was the issue? And before he answered, I put it under a microscope. Said, oh, okay. The whole board is the issue. Cool. So
so it was quite apparent.
project. Yeah.
What gave it away?
Well, the SMC no longer has any solder balls under it. It's just goo.
Do you need those?
Yeah, it's kind of important. The SMC or the BIOS chip is mostly gone.
Doesn't sound like that's important.
Yeah, so this will be a fun project. Hopefully, I get to stream about it a little bit, but we'll see.
That's exciting. So what model was that? I missed it.
This is a 13-inch mid 2012. You know, the kick-ass one.
Nice. So that's one where you could actually remove the memory and stuff like that.
Yep. And I have at least 60 donor boards. So if I can't fix this, I should just quit and never touch a soldering iron again.
That's when you're just going to be like, "Hey Garth, look, I fixed it. It's why don't the serial numbers match?" You know.
See how impatient he is?
My apologies. I did miss a little bit of that. Is this the board you bought? Is that the one you were talking? No, okay.
No. Did I buy a board?
Yeah, you bought a busted one, and then you didn't do a live stream.
Oh no, this is not that one. No,
there's multiple ones here. I see.
Yeah.
I do that a lot. Yeah.
Yes. You're very good
Oh,
at not
boy.
doing a live stream.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's okay.
I did live stream. I didn't start the live stream, but I was on a live stream.
Doesn't count. It's got to be under the House of Moth banner, or it's just does not count. Sorry.
Okay.
There are rules. It's part of the MacYac code.
Well, yeah. There's I made it up for Jay last night because I was sort of like sleep deprived in streaming. So
Yeah, that was good. And I have to admit, I just loved seeing that constant disappointment from you every time a little red square came up as you were trying to image those discs.
well, I will say, exciting things are happening as far as equipment being sent to me to try and get more life out of some of these discs. So I'll share more information when that arrives. But
Is Facebook sending you their quantum computer?
yes, I'm getting a Facebook computer, I'm getting a MySpace computer, and I'm getting a Friendster computer, and we're going to wire those all together.
Aren't we
With
supposed
Apple
to say
Talk, right?
Meta?
Whatever.
I think we're
Anyway,
supposed to say
so
Meta now.
There's a interesting thing with these discs that some of them are in different formats. So yeah, who knows? Anywho,
Anywho,
I want to talk about the little thing that I picked up yesterday because not a lot of people tuned in at 10:30 because most of them were probably asleep. And I'm gonna
normal working class people.
yeah, sorry. So what I'm gonna try and do is I've never clicked on the share slides feature before, but apparently
Where do you see that anyway?
it's under share. You
That's
don't
new.
see it? Yeah. So I mean, it's been there for a bit.
oh my
but-
goodness, I see it. I think it's probably always been there. I've just never noticed it.
So I have to add Google Slides, and I have to connect this to my account first. So this is first time. Hopefully, it doesn't break. Maybe.
If I
Oh,
keep
here it
peering
is.
out the window, it's because I'm waiting for a tradesman to arrive. So
No, you're just
That's
waiting
like
for the
it.
wine, Bruce. Don't. bother us.
Excuse me, sorry to interrupt. When did this happen? Who's responsible for this?
I don't know, but I'll
Oh.
fix it.
No.
I'm leaving.
All right. So, I just want to talk a little bit about this because it's a topic which we might not have a lot of tonight. Anywho, it's beige. So there we go. That's a good segue. So let's see how this works. Oh, look at that. We have a little slide controller and everything. So, backtracking, I should say that a few months ago on Reddit, someone posted some pictures of a peculiar-looking beige Macintosh that they claimed to be an early model in this handsome little case, this little handmade leather case. And they posted some pictures, and a few people let me know about it, but I looked at it and responded to the thread and messaged them and said, hey, if you want any ideas or any thoughts of like what model this is, I'd be happy to check it out. Where are you located in the world? Turns out they're only my audio is weird, Bruce says. Poopy.
Some intermittent popping. Sorry, I was trying to do that discreetly.
No,
and then
that's
you're
all
just
right.
like,
It's okay.
it's not that bad, but it's just
all right. I hope it's not
occasional
that bad.
popping. Yeah.
Well, if so, I'll switch to the Chromie Bluetooth. But thank you for letting me know. Don't worry. We all interrupt each other because we love each other. Not guaranteed.
Disclaimer.
Turns out this person was only a few hours away, and they had some other goodies too. So we've been chatting over the past few weeks or so, and the intention was for me to take a look at the machine, assess it, because if it is the real deal, if this is a pre-production, pre-retail model, it's well worth more than I could afford. And so the idea would be to assess it, see if it turns on, take some pictures, document it, pass it back to them, and go from there. So I wasn't expecting all these goodies in the van, but we have some 512K Max. We have an image writer, of course, because I need more image writers like I need a hole in the head, but it's a beautiful little image writer, of course. And this lovely Mac in the little case here. And so I'm going to go to the next slide. So this case has an interesting story behind it. So Rick or Richard Ross was a individual who was, I believe, a contractor for Apple and other software companies. And his wife, Beth, was the individual who brought this stuff to me. And Rick couldn't make it down, but maybe we'll do a video interview or some fun stuff like that. But essentially, this case has a bit of a story. Apparently, it was either commissioned by Steve Jobs to hold a Macintosh, and only a handful of them were made, or it was presented as a gift or a sample from a place that was trying to make these. It's all handmade leather. There's no markings on it. There's a little badge in the front where you could put a logo or something like that, but there's no markings on it at all. But it's very interesting. It has a little carry thing for the keyboard, a little pouch there, and yeah. So bring the Mac out of the case. The left one here is my 128K, and the right one is the pre-production model. So first off at the bat, you could see that there's some differences here. Notably, the badge doesn't say Macintosh.
Calling it a Macintosh.
Yep, they did not have the word for it, is what they said. So it was just Apple at the time, which is pretty darn cool. And if you would look for the serial number, well, you'd find this A1454. No serial number, barcode, or anything like that. Curiously, more enough, if you look this way, you'll see that the little footsies got little apples on them. Isn't that freaking cute?
That's cute.
And also the you see how the grill is there, and it has that plastic thick spacer there. Well, on the 128K retail Mac, there are two of those, one next to that one. So they were still fiddling around with the air intake, from what I understand. That was told to me. So here, let's go next. You can see all 4 little feet there have the little Apple logo on it, which is just adorable. So they are imprinted into there, which I just think is really cool, because like the little tiny things that nobody would notice, that's what Apple was known for,
Yeah,
of course.
that is really, really cool. It's a shame they didn't continue that, because that is
Oh,
super
yeah.
cute.
No.
I
mean,
guess costs.
Yeah. I'm sure someone on Etsy is going to make those now. So,
Because one of the things we always have to keep in mind when it comes to the Macintosh history is this thing was being sold for so much more money than Steve Jobs wanted. Steve Jobs wanted this to be sold as a real budget machine, but of course the manufacturing cost just kept getting bigger and bigger. So things like that, they might have ended up saying, you know what, no one's going to see them. We can save ourselves a few dollars per unit. Let's just keep them playing.
Yeah, I think the price grew by like $1,000 from the initial inception to the retail model. But
from what I understand, he wanted this thing to sell just slightly above what the Apple II was selling for.
Yeah, I think it was 1,000, then it was 1,500. Then what did it come out? It's like 2,400.
No, it was like
Something like
3,400.
Something like that. Anyway, too much money.
Ridiculous in 1984. I mean, that's like almost 10 grand.
Especially a machine you couldn't upgrade the memory for.
Yeah,
I think he wanted it available for $1,000. I think that was the original idea, was that the Macintosh would sell for $1,000. But it was just, there was no way.
$24.95 at launch, says Adam. Okay, yeah. All right, so next up is the keyboard. You'll notice the sticker on the bottom is a little bit different. It does not have a barcode or anything like that. Early serial number label there, which is neat. The keyboard was in pretty, needs cleaning condition, but otherwise was okay. Here's, with the case off, we do have a little bit of corrosion, just a wee bit.
Did it have the card on the side?
No.
Okay.
And big thanks to Joe of Joe's Computer Museum, Javier, and Adam in the chat here for helping me out, because I was twittering them throughout this, just asking them some questions, because I know those people's are very smarts when it comes to the chips and the functionality of this, and Bruce was sleeping, of course. Thanks, Bruce. Let me see if I could, I don't think I can zoom in here, but essentially there is some corrosion. If you look at the left side of the board, where that big square is sort of in the middle, that's where the power switch is on and off. And right above there was where the battery terminal was. And that battery was made the contacts a little bit green, and you could see there are black traces above that. And you can see there's some corrosion, a nice swirly bit of corrosion right below or right by that power switch. Now, since this is a valuable machine that is likely a prototype, which we later found out it is a prototype, I did not want to tinker around with this or fix anything. That is up to whoever buys it. That's what they're going to do. A lot of people like to leave this stuff original, even if it's going to, combust into flames. That's up to the buyer's decision, I suppose. I wanted to be very careful. Sorry?
And
I said Steve's lazy.
Yeah, no.
And interestingly, when the very first Macs came out, as we know, there was a protective card over the top of that. And of course, they used to stick that card down with sort of like a double-sided tape. And of course, this has got no indication that it's ever had that double-sided tape on it. So
no, yeah, and
never had that card.
Yeah, and there are no pins or anything holding that together or anything like that. Let me see if I could go. I just added a close-up slide. No, it's not going to do it. But anyway, yeah. If you zoom in on your browser, you can see the corrosion there. But
yeah. I mean, it's sticking out like dogs' fingers. Just when you look at that picture there.
So here's the analog board and the CRT. You can see the flatback transformer has a nice white cable. We're used to the red ones, but just depending on the manufacturer, I suppose. There's also some writing on the analog board, C039.
Sure,
and the logic, maybe. But the other one, there's another marking on the logic board that says that's definitely a 0, and it starts with C. So that's what I'm basing that on. Cool. But it looked pretty darn clean inside. Really not a lot of dust at all. There is, Bruce could probably spot it, right under the neck is the CRT. If you follow that line, there is some corrosion there on the frame. And it's not really touching anything. So I'm not sure what was going on there. But just something interesting to note. And here is the logic board, which we're going to see is a little bit different. So we got
Yeah.
a red LED right below my thumb there, which that socket is actually there
Yeah.
on the retail boards. It's just not
It's same
populated.
as so R11, which is to the left of it there. That
Yeah.
is the resistor for that LED. So R11 and the
Ah.
LED are not on the retail board. So
Nice. See, I
I'd
didn't
be
even
very
notice the
interested to
resistor.
get the colors off the R11 because I
Well,
would
I
love
took-
to actually. You did?
I took more detailed photos, so hopefully they show up. But the bigger thing here is this little board dealie, which is right here, and that is, as labeled here, a 512 EEPROM adapter. And Adam was cluing me in as to why one would do this, because 32K ROM chips were expensive back in the day. Plus, it would have been easier if they maybe had leftover parts from like the Apple IIs or something like that to use the 16K chips that they had. So they're using 4 of those 16K chips, a little NAND gate, probably LS00 little device there under U7, and basically redirecting all that information into those high and low sockets, into the 2 there.
Excuse
so it's
me,
like
sir.
a 4 to 2 adapter. Yes, sir.
I don't see a. I see the board. I don't see a board.
There is actually another
above
board
it.
on top of the other board.
If you were a Beige, you'd know. But look in the middle.
I'm not a
and
Beige.
look in the middle and look for an outline.
Oh, okay,
it's,
yeah, I see.
Yeah,
it
it's same color.
If it was at
It's-
an
yeah.
angle, you would see it a lot more because it'd actually be a few millimeters.
Yeah, let's
on
go with
top
that. The
of
photo sucks. Let's go with that. It's not me.
Love you
it's the
too,
photo.
Jay. But there's also little Mr. Macintosh on there. So that is the infamous little drawing that Steve Jobs tried to promote and have inside the Mac OS to just pop up at random times and scare the bejesus out of you. So Mr. Macintosh is on the board, even if it's this little EEPROM adapter. And these EEPROMs have dates, not dates on them, but numbers on them. And apparently 6.9 was the version of the ROM that was final, but this says 7.0. So it'd be very interesting to see that. Now, Adam, I did not take a photo of the CPU, but it is a ceramic one. And there are little plastic things going around it. Because if you look at this adapter, and I don't think I have a better close-up. No. Oh, wait, I do. Here, let me go next. If you look at this adapter, that there's some more shadow here so you can see it popping out. There's this little wire from the left side going down and to the right side. Those are plugged into resistors at those 3 spots. So in order to remove that, I would have had to desolder that, and I was not about
Now
to
I can see the board.
touch this a little bit because I didn't want to mess anything up. But anyway, it was very, very neat to see that. So this was before we powered it on. Want to note one thing about the signatures. They are slightly different. So there's an Apple part number at the very top right above Jeff Raskin's name there. The support structure of the case is also different. Usually there would be a sort of a T shape. Well, there's this X shape that you could barely see. Wozniak's signature in the bottom right has been moved slightly because the molding of the back of the case had changed. So there are very minute differences. I have a bunch of other photos that show it better, but I'm not going to show you every single picture. But if you scroll down a little bit, you could see that some of the markings here are different than not just the signatures, but some of the posts and things are slightly different than a retail case would be. And so the moment of truth was to turn it on and got this. So
that's very promising. I got to tell you, when you have a computer at that age and you get that, I'm telling you, you're not far away from working.
No, so it chimed. The LED lights up when the machine is on, which is cool because now we know what the LED did. And there are vertical lines that are missing here, maybe a memory issue or whatever. So of course the memory is soldered on this machine. You can't just reseat it. But I thought, wait a second. Bruce has a handy video where he goes into the voltages and how to test the voltages through the floppy port. So I made myself a little cheat sheet, wrote that down, and proceeded to test the voltages of this little guy. Excuse me.
Not with a Kai
And
Weeks.
so, not a Kai Weets multimeter, unfortunately.
It's a shame because the Kaiweets KM601 is actually a really good multimeter. Lots of features and budget price.
Oh, wow. I should check it out.
You just hear like the cash register in the background as Bruce makes a sale. And so, thankfully, the 5-volt rail, the 12-volt rail, and the negative 12-volt rail were all in spec. So I thought, okay, well, it's probably, even if the analog board has some bad caps and the image isn't perfect, probably getting enough power to boot. So that's not the issue here. So I looked at the board here and removed those ROMs and reseated everything. And with reseating everything, I used my floppy MU to try and boot it up, and we get some SADMAX. So we got a 0064 error and 0004 error, which didn't really correspond to anything that we were experiencing trouble with. So the next thing I wanted to do was take those ROM chips and plug them into a PC. Yes, Jay?
Quick question. Is that separate board soldered on or socketed?
It is socketed on, but there is a metal link at 3 points that is keeping it on there. But I was able to remove those ROM chips and use a PC program to read them and determine there is data on them. So there was data on all 4 chips, so nothing looked out of the ordinary. If you try and read a chip of this age that has failed, sometimes you'll see a lot of Fs or zeros or blank points, etc. So that was telling me that there was data on the ROMs. Those ROMs have been backed up. They have been preserved. I will share more on that whenever I can, but there you go. And after wiggling around and spraying some contact cleaner in it, we got a fancy screen without problems. So I also cleaned the memory area with a Q-tip and some isopropyl alcohol, so who knows if there was some dust or anything like that. We did boot off the floppy MU, but every once in a while we get a SADMAC during the boot process. Not sure if it was related to memory failing or just a bad connection or voltages or anything like that. But we did get it to boot. So here it is, version 4.1 and 128K of memory. And yes, this is a real deal original prototype. Now, unfortunately, you might be able to notice it here. The display is sort of sagging vertically. And as the machine was left on, it got like even further down. It was probably about halfway of the screen. So definitely some capacitors and some work on that analog board is needed to get this thing in tip-top shape. But I was here assessing the machine. I was here to ensure that the machine was functional, that you could boot it up, that it would read a disk, and the ROMs and everything were okay, and it wouldn't catch on fire. Although the reefer caps are original in here, so I didn't leave it on. Yeah, I didn't leave it on for more than needed because I didn't want it to pop and then, okay, now, a collector or somebody is going to be like, well, you replaced the reefer caps, whatever. But it was probably on for a total of 5 minutes, if that, during this whole procedure. And it shut down. It's in the bag. And I am working with the individual who owns this machine to try and assess the value of it, hook them up with some auction places who specialize in these sorts of things, so they could get a good amount of what it's worth. Because something like this, which is, through the photos and the stuff we've looked at, is a pre-production model, whether it was a model that was pre-press or a prototype or whatever you want to call it. I mean, there has to be so many of these in-between models between concept and the final product. I'm just going to call it a prototype because that EEPROM board is a big indicator there that the ROMs weren't finished. And I think it's a really neat machine.
Just tell the individual, I'll give him $100. Be done with it. And I will kick off my beige collection with that.
Just remember, Steve, this is the prototype.
Yeah.
This is the prototype of all prototypes.
Yeah. So, so when they said how much is it worth, I said, well, you're looking at a lot of money here. I don't even know.
Nothing.
Yeah.
It is their intention then to just sell it as is.
Yeah, I think I had a conversation with them, and their stance on it could change. But I said, look, there are two sides of this argument. One is it should be recapped. You should clean up the corrosion. You should get it in tip-top shape internally and sell it that way. The other side of the coin is no, leave it as is. Let the buyer decide if they're going to just stick it in a display case, be quote-unquote original gunk on it, or clean it up. Because that's the thing. Once you go making modifications to it, it's
So
there's the debate of how original is it. In my mind, it's a component. It's not a capacitor that was made by Apple. It was made by a company in the 80s, and now we're putting another one in there. But that's just my opinion.
If you're going to properly treat that trace right, you're going to have to scrape off the UV mask. You're going to have to scrape off all the black stuff, and then you're going to have to coat something on top of it. And once you've done that, it's not going to look the same anymore. It's going to be protected for the future, but it's not going to look the same anymore. And you have to start to question the decision about whether that should be done is probably best left to whoever's going to fork out silly amounts of money for it rather than the person selling it. So as much as I would like to get my hands on that and clean it up, you would have to say to whoever owns it, just be aware that there might be some people out there that see what I am doing to this, potentially putting in new capacitors, potentially cleaning up the old UV mask and stuff like that. There might be some people that look at that and say that that's devaluing it. So you just have to warn people of that. So,
This is one of those machines that boots from the ROMs, right?
No. Floppy disk.
Oh, so the operating system you booted from was not a pre-release or anything?
No. Now, in the many discs that I was given, there are pre-release versions of the Macintosh operating system, which differ slightly, including having a Grim Reaper in the trash can icon area, which is interesting. But this system, the ROMs contain code such as like the window drawings and stuff like that, information that was going to be reused that they didn't want to waste memory on. So that's what might be different slightly in this ROM versus a retail ROM.
Cool.
So yeah, I mean this thing was cool just to look at. I mean, trust me, Bruce, I was the same way. I was like itching to be like, I just want to just scrape the corrosion off and just clean it up a little bit. But all I did was clean up the corrosive pads on the battery terminal and dust off the machine slightly. But
so
it's cool that it still works even with the trace rot on the board.
Oh yeah, I used a multimeter and tested it. There was continuity, so I said, okay, if there wasn't continuity, probably I would have just did a bodge wire from one point to one point without redoing the trace, just to try and get it to work.
We don't know what's providing the continuity. Is it copper or is it something else? But it is working.
It's faith and hope and luck.
Yeah,
in that order.
Random cockroach.
No, that's quite an amazing find. That really is, and I mean, it's a shame that there isn't more information about it. It's a shame there isn't someone who can actually give us, very clear information about, its background and what it was used for and who used and all that sort of stuff.
Well, I know who used it, and that is Richard. And Richard went on to work on MacCalc, Lotus 123, and some other prominent applications. This is not the end of the journey for this computer. I'm going to help those individuals try and find a good auction house or provider to help make sure that this gets the attention it deserves. I will likely be trying to interview them to find out more about this machine. I want to know exactly what you said, Bruce. What it was used for, when did they get it, who they got it from. These individuals lived in California, so obviously this was right directly from Apple. Although they're on the East Coast of the country now, they brought it with them. So I want to find out all the gaps there for my own purposes. But obviously, I think the story behind this machine is also going to help sell it, and that's what I was telling these individuals. Is like, this Mac was used to help develop this program and that program, or it was used in this era, and I think that's what's really neat about it. Because look, you could get a prototype off eBay and spend $20,000 on it if you're deep pockets. But yeah, no, the serial number is very rudimentary.
Not an official one.
It's literally A1454.
Yeah, it's more like a model number.
Yeah. So I mean, who knows where that number started? Or
may I offer a suggestion before this finds its way to an auction house? It should make 3 pit stops. One, you recap it, you clean it up, you make it all fine again. Then you send it to Dave for the most hideous paint job you can possibly imagine. After that, you send it to Sean of Action Retro, and he'll put a Blu-ray burner in, Dolby Atmos, everything, and then you sell it at auction. I think it'll be.
Who is it? Who is actually? I was going to say who is it made that modification to the internal SCSI, but I just remembered that the 128K doesn't have SCSI.
Yeah, that was
We
Dave.
didn't
I
get SCSI
think.
till the Mac Plus. Yeah.
So, no, was it Dave? I forget who was doing that. Oh no, that was the guy we were watching that Jay turned us on to. Big Bad Biologist, right?
Is it Big
Yeah,
Bad? Big Bad's in the chat.
Oh,
here,
that
right?
guy.
Yes, that
Yeah.
guy. That cool guy.
He did something with a lot of wires, and I didn't know what it was about.
I thought it was cool.
Impressive.
But to answer Garth's question, here are all the pictures I took of the machine. So there are some date codes in there, I'm sure. I took some video, but yeah, mostly photos. But yeah, Apple, Jay, you have to update your Apple serial number info website to work with this.
I'll be honest, I haven't touched that website in over a year. It needs a lot more than just updates.
Oh goodness! So yeah, that was quite an adventure. I will share if I can get the photo up here.
Oh, you mentioned his name.
That one of the machines that they also gave me, besides a Dell in the box, which hopefully I could find a suitor for, was this lovely Power Macintosh 6100 that says DOS compatible on it. And I thought, oh, okay, there's a DOS compatible card. Pretty cool. Opened it up. There's not a DOS compatible card, but there's a Radius card with the NUBUS adapter, and apparently this is a pretty good video card. This is a Le Mans GT, LEMANS space GT from 1994.
I think it's pronounced Le Mans.
Le Mans? Bruce will pronounce it from now on. But pretty darn cool. I think that's better than I already have the compatibility card in a separate box somewhere. So I think that's pretty neat. I don't know if that machine works. That'll be another stream where I tinker with that. But we're already eating up 30 minutes of everyone's life. So
Just rip the video card out and throw the rest of that thing away.
I just wanted it for the bezel where it says DOS compatible, because that's the only reason to have this machine in my house. I already have like a stack of the stupid things.
Yeah, none of them work because they're all junk.
I'm telling you, Mike loves the original 601 Power PC. He really loves it. It's one of his favorite CPUs. So
20 years I had to live with one of those. 20 flipping years.
But you're going to see
83 megahertz 601. I do not want to deal with another one ever freaking again.
Oh, not even the 60 megahertz? That'll be slower?
No. And it wasn't even on a Mac.
Oh, God.
I just hate the 601 is just a piece of crap, period. Everything else is fine. The 601s are crap.
Well, it's a perfect segue here.
The timing is perfect because the plumber's just turned up.
Well,
Bruce, come back tomorrow.
I'm going to have to duck off to greet him and get him underway. So, hey, Steve, now's a really good time to show everyone that amazing 128K that you found.
All right, let's start from the top. So, no worries, Bruce.
Okay, so I will do a quick little introduction here, really quickly, and then I'll just duck away, and then I'll let you guys obviously talk about it. So, we basically this morning, this evening over there, we were basically looking at our topics for tonight's show and noticing that there weren't any, and so. One of the struggles that we always have is like, okay, what are we going to do that's new and interesting? What are we going to do that's fresh? And then we decided, no, we can't do that. So let's stop trying. So I then said, look, I've got a potential idea for something we can do. And this is one of the reasons why it's the Beige Special. And that is that we can provide our, sort of collective knowledge and knowledge in the chat as well. And basically just go for a bit of a tour through some of the vintage Macs. Not necessarily all of them, but we'll just work through them for a minute in a time frame, and we'll talk about the how readily available they are, what sort of dollars you're going to spend on them, what their known problems are, and stuff like that. So anyhow, I got to go now. So I've done the setup, and now and then I'll be back in just a couple of minutes. So my apologies, guys. So
wait, what did Bruce say? I missed it.
There we go. Back soon.
All right, Steve, you're on your own. Bye.
Ah, crap.
You're not on your own. I'm here.
I just want to share this real quick. I forgot to put this in the slide deck. But this is just the prototype sticker on the back, the FCC label. I love that it's missing the warning, caution, do not open to prevent electric shock. Just shows you that they didn't care.
I'm actually surprised it has an FCC ID on it. That's actually...
Well, yeah, they were probably working on it, I guess.
So they must have... I wonder if this is the one that they... I wonder if this is one of the ones that they submitted for FCC approval.
It could be. Yeah, it could have been along that line. I mean, how many... I would assume there were dozens of iterations, from the piece of wooden box with the board on it and the bare CRT to the plastic molded case. And stuff,
I've seen pictures of one of the very first ones that was using a Disk 2 floppy drive.
Yeah. So this
very, very early iteration.
Yeah. So this one I would say is pretty near final because there are only these minute differences of the LED, the resistor, the ROMs, obviously, and that's just a hat on top of the board, and then the badge on the back. And so this was probably very late in the game.
What about the case itself? Was it the same material they used or different material?
It felt identical. It felt identical with the texture. The inside, like I said, there were some different moldings of everything. I will want to look at the dates on the chips I took pictures of, but that's one of the things where you have to decode them. You can't really, just be like, oh yeah, it's a date of blah, blah, blah. There's also a date on the CRT, I think had 83 on it, but I'd like to look that up as well. But anywho,
yeah, I have no love for Beige, but I love prototypes in general, and especially if they tell a story, like, oh, this is what they did, and this is how we ended up with the retail version.
Yeah, and with
awesome.
Came with all these cool discs and Lisa discs and Mac discs, and I mean, come on, there's some cool stuff here.
And Joe has a good point, by the way.
If it will retain the value, yes, I licked the computer. How about that? No, wait, the value is plummeting. No. All right, so this topic we're going to talk about Beige stuff. We talked a lot about the 128, the 512, the 512K, and the Plus, like that series. I'm going to let Mike talk about it too. But essentially, if we're talking like repairability and things that can go wrong, 90% of the time it's going to be the analog board or the CRT. The logic board really is going to give you
there's not really much on these machines to go wrong. That's a nice thing
about them. Yeah, I mean, you will find the memory chips on them, just like on the Apple II, can go bad, and you might have to replace those, and they're all not socketed, so that's a pain in the butt. But most of the time, you're going to be dealing with analog board issues and power issues and things like that. Also, finding the appropriate keyboard is getting harder and harder every day. There is an adapter that you can make. I've made a YouTube video about it, so you could Google that. There is an adapter you can make to use a plain Jane PS2 keyboard. I think people are working on other solutions too for the mouse and the keyboard as well. But hey, Bruce, welcome back.
Hello, I'm back. So what did I miss?
We were just talking about that 90% of the time the analog and CRT are going to be problematic with these machines. Memory chips do fail, but and then finding a keyboard is fun, and that's when you walked in.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, just sort of adding to that, I mean, people often talk about sort of recapping the analog boards on these, but I would say with most of them that your first thing to do would be check for cracked solder joints, and then also be checking out a lot of the resistors and the diodes first. You'll find a lot of these units here, it's not uncommon to just plug them in, switch them on, and nothing happens at all. And that's more likely with these ones to be things like, as I say, resistors or diodes rather than the capacitors. Not saying they shouldn't be recapped, but just saying that's a more common point of failure on these. And of course, they weren't, thanks to Steve Jobs, they didn't have a fan in them and they did get hot. And so in particular in this country here, where it can get blazingly hot, there are a lot of them that have actually failed because of heat related stuff. So.
You're never going to live down the barbecue sauce.
Oh, that was seriously. I will absolutely shamelessly say that was beautiful. Beautiful. I would do it again. I will do it again. In fact, I might even do a live stream of it.
Bruce, no, you need to make like one of those YouTube shorts of you just saying that. You will skyrocket in views just because of how disgusting it is. Now I just gave away $1 million idea.
I will do a video of me making the lasagna, and then I will do a video of me eating it with barbecue sauce on it. There you go. So.
And I will do a video of just me clicking unsubscribe
and vomiting.
All right, next please.
Okay, so next one. Let's move up.
Just
so
jump up to the SE.
Yeah, because
So
we
I-
talked about the Plus
We'll
and the
just
512.
very
were all
quickly talk
similar.
about the.
The first
we
three
talked
are
about the
all
512 and the
identical
Plus.
machines.
We've already
Yeah,
done.
the only thing I guess we didn't touch on is the floppy drive gear, which could be said
That's
about
right.
anything.
Yeah.
but-
So, well, actually, I mean, it is. Did you mention obviously the 400K and the 800K
Nope.
disc difference between? So, obviously, with the 128K and the 512K originally, they had a 400K single sided disc, which used the what was it, Apple file system, which meant
Yeah.
that even though you could create subdirectories on there, as far as the file system was concerned, all of the files were in the same location. So you couldn't get two files of the same name and put one into inside a folder, because even though it was inside a folder, it wasn't really. And then they brought out the HFS, the hierarchical file system, which came with the 800K discs, and that was the 512KE had the 800K disc, and the Macintosh Plus, and that was of course a big difference.
Just want to chime in here quickly. So Beth Ross, hello Beth. So Beth and Rick were the ones I was mentioning earlier on the show when we were talking about that lovely prototype 128K. There's a lot of interest from questions and stuff like that. This might not be the best way to communicate at this point in time because we're going to be yakking about stuff all night. But I have some excellent questions from people in the chat that asked about the history of the machine. So I know we talked about having a little bit of an interview or a discussion, so some of that will be fueled by here. But thank you for stopping by, and there's a lot of people who are appreciative of the work that was done on this machine and the software that was created and all that fun stuff. So thank you.
Yeah, basically, I offered $20. Just go.
I offered 50. You know, I mean, sky's the limit.
Yeah, but that's
Gotta-
Australian.
gotta-
20 is still
Got to add
better.
some zeros to it.
So obviously with the things like the 128K, they're getting very hard to find, and they're also getting quite expensive to buy if you're a collector. They're a very good one to have from a collectability point of view, but if we're talking about usability, 128K is not a lot. And I would actually say to a lot of people, if you're wanting to collect, you know, we're not talking about prototypes here. We're just talking about, you know, if you're wanting to collect a computer, I think the Mac Plus is actually a really good candidate, upgradable to 4 megabytes of RAM, has SCSI, so you can connect a SCSI to SD or a blue SCSI to it, that sort of thing. So the downside to the Mac Plus is the same issue we have with the 128K and 512K, and that is the keyboard and the mouse, and they are getting hard to find. If you're wanting to have them matching, a lot of the time people are selling the keyboards and the mice for like hundreds of dollars. So yeah,
Not that they're being bought for that much, but they're asking silly prices.
yeah. I know someone here who recently spent an absolutely silly amount of money on a
Well, that's Australian dollars, so that's a bit
yeah,
silly.
that's right.
But there are adapters that people are making, thankfully, to let you use a different mouse and a keyboard on those.
So we now have the old Macintosh 2. Now, I think by this stage, I think Steve Jobs is gone, hasn't he? So
yeah, 83, I think, right?
We've now
85.
got
85,
yeah.
rather.
So we've got them basically, you know, Apple probably more responding to, you know, sort of competition in the market out there, and people were sick and tired of a little 9-inch black and white screen. They wanted to be able to put their own screen on it. They wanted to be able to have color. They wanted expandability. So along comes the first of the modular Macs, which is the Macintosh 2. And I have to tell you, if you load up System 3 onto a Macintosh 2, it flies. It is a very, very powerful computer. And of course, the Macintosh 2 also took us to the 68020 CPU, one of only 2 Macs that use that CPU. And I think from memory, I think that's another one of the CPUs that Mike really likes.
Oh, yeah. They're just the best freaking computer ever made.
But look, they had a floating point unit. They had quite a lot of RAM expandability. You could put in 20 megabytes of RAM as standard, or if you did there was a ROM upgrade you could do with these, and that would allow you to use FDHD floppy drives, so 1.4 megabyte floppy drives, and that would also allow you to take it up to 68 megabytes of RAM. So no internal video on the Mac 2, so if you wanted to display something, you needed to have a display card. but plenty of slots. And of course, the other thing you could do with this, and this is something where they predated Windows in such a big way, is you could have multiple display cards, connect up multiple screens, and have one great big desktop and move your cursor across it. So,
And I plugged in.
I was going to say, just a fun little fact, you could do that with the Mac SE too.
Yep. So it's I'll never forget the time one of my Windows friends showed me that. He said, "Hey man, check out what you can do. What I've done here with my Windows machine." I'm like, mate, we've been doing that on Macs for years, buddy.
Yeah, I think how many monitors did I get plugged in on my stream? I think it was 5. And then I ran out of memory on the system.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. No, that was because the great thing about that was the peer pressure that we gave you, where we kept on getting you to add more and more screens.
I was stacking LCDs on top of CRTs. The power meter in my house was like this,
So anyhow, look, I consider the Macintosh 2 to be very collectible. For me, if you're hunting for one, the one, if you get one with the ROM upgrade, that is just like, that's the greatest thing. And I managed to pick one up with the ROM upgrade, and I didn't know it was going to have it when I went and bought it.
You lucky duck.
Yeah, there was one that was for sale, and I went to go pick it up, and as I grabbed it, when you bought the ROM kit, it came with little stickers, little teeny weeny stickers that you could stick in the little groove right next to the floppy drive, so you could label whether one was a high density floppy drive or a low density one, so whether it was an 800K or a FDHD. And so it came with these little stickers, and when he handed this thing to me at the door of his house, because I'd already paid for it, with PayPal, so I was just there to pick up, and I just saw the little sticker in the groove, and I thought, oh yes, and then I opened it up, and sure enough, it had the ROM upgrade. So I was just really pleased to have got that. But I do consider them to be a pretty collectible computer, because they are the first of the modular Macs. But they are getting pretty hard to find these days, I would say.
Yeah, and I think, how did that happen? What? Where'd Bruce go? Oh, his internet went bye-bye. Well, someone come back in, so it's not just me.
And you just deleted the screen
share.
Oh,
thank goodness. Well, his internet went poopy, and that's why
I bumped I have a mouse that has a forward and back button on it, and I bumped the back button.
We were like, okay, Bruce is gone, the page is gone, mass hysteria.
Sorry about that. That was
there are a few flavors of the Mac 2, so whether it's the Mac 2, the Mac 2X, the Mac 2FX, either of those machines is fine. Yes, it's nice to have one with the ROM upgrade, and the 2FX is the fastest of the bunch. But
the Mac 2 with the ROM upgrade actually is a very usable system. I will admit that.
Now, just skipping ahead a little bit, the other series of the family of the Mac 2s, you have the 2CI, 2CX, 2SI. A lot of those are fine. The 2SI, you need an adapter to use a regular NuBus card on. But the 2CI and the 2CX are pretty good if you don't want to use as many slots. You only have 3 instead of 6 for expandability cards. If you're fine with that, really, there's not too much compromise other than a single floppy disk drive. But you're probably going to be using a hard disk, and you can always plug an external one in too. So.
So, thing to keep in mind with the 2, 2X, 2FX, 2CX, 2CI, all of these, if you are looking to buy them as a collector, all of these are going to have problems relating to the startup circuit. Mac 2 in particular.
What's a startup circuit, Bruce, for people who don't know?
So basically, these computers had what was referred to as a soft start. And what that meant was that rather than clicking a physical switch to switch them on, you would plug them in, and then you would switch them on. You could either do it with the power key on the keyboard, or you could do it with the button at the back. But the button at the back, again, it wasn't a clicking switch. It was a press in, it was almost like a keyboard switch. Oh my goodness, what on earth is this all about?
No, you got to mute him. He's not allowed in here.
How on earth could this even be possible?
No, get out.
Now
Bruce lost his train of thought.
I know
we're talking about soft power. You're not allowed here, Greg.
Yeah, sorry, I forgot the screen was today.
What did
we called it?
We called that. So anyhow, yeah. So what I would say from a collectability point of view, if you're going down the path of a Macintosh 2, 2X, 2FX, 2CI, 2CX, do expect that there's going to need some restoration work. There's going to need to be recapping, possibly some trace repair going on with these as well. So that's just something to keep in mind if you are planning to get one of these in your collection. 2SI, which of course is another member of the Mac 2 family. They are notoriously bad. They suffer from battery explosions. They suffer from capacitor leakage on both the logic board and the power supply. But yeah, I mean, So just keeping that in mind. But they're great ones to have in the collection. So
Yep.
I'm going to just quickly mention the SE here, mainly because, in my opinion, this is a very mature product in terms of the compact Mac. In particular, if you can get hold of the FDHD one, the SE FDHD, which allows you to read 1.4 megabyte floppy disks and has a hard drive in it as well. And one really important thing with the SE is the SE had a power supply that would switch between the voltages. So unlike the original Macintosh 128K, 512K plus, even the Classic and Classic 2 that had power supplies that were actually wired up for the voltage of the region. These ones here, the power supply, it was the same power supply for everywhere in the world. And you just plugged it in, whatever you wanted, and it would just work. And that, to me, was a real maturing of the product. And I actually think the SE is an incredibly robust machine. And if you are looking to collect one of these and you find one of these on eBay or something like that, there's probably about a 90% chance that you will be able to just plug it in and it'll work. There's no surface mount electrolytic caps on there. They are just a really rock solid machine. And I say that knowing at the moment that I think, Steve, don't you have one that's giving you some grief? Is it you have one that's giving you some grief?
No, the one that was giving me grief just literally had a battery explode on it. But I'm probably gonna take out the Super WAS chip or the SWIM, whatever it is, and put it in another one.
Yeah. Well, that's the other thing, of course, that's great about the Macintosh SE is there is the Reloaded project by Kai Robinson, and you can buy a new blank logic board if you have one that's original that's been damaged. You can migrate all the parts across. A lot of the parts are still available, but the ones that aren't available, you can just migrate them across from the old board and then put new parts in for all the other bits. I think.
And the other thing is just the FDHD and the SuperDrive models are identical physically. Different branding to coincide with changes internally within marketing. So if you see one branded as a SuperDrive, that's just another name for the disk drive, which was FDHD, floppy disk high density. So that's just something to be aware of. If you're looking for these machines, don't be surprised.
Okay, so we've kind of done the 2X. I mean, again, the 2X, the one thing that was great about the 2X is you could take that up to a full 128 megabytes of RAM. And at the
if
time
you had, two houses to sell.
That's exactly right. I mean, buying a 16 megabytes SIM, I mean, you would have had to mortgage your house to do it. But you could theoretically do that. And that was a pretty big sort of limit to put on something at that time. It was quite an amazing thing. So I just wanted to respond to something in the chat here. And
about the SE30?
Yeah, about how the SE compares with the SE30 in terms of robustness. Well, they both have a very similar power supply, and they both. Oh, random.
Thank you, Gart, for the super chat.
Thank you.
Very random. You get it.
Yeah, much appreciated. They both have pretty much the same analog board in them. And again, that side of it's pretty robust, though you may have some cracked solder joints. It's just obviously with the SE30, the logic board has a surface mount electrolytic capacitors, and they will need to be replaced if you're getting one of those in your collection. Yeah. Should we mention the Classic? We probably should, because the funny thing about the Classic was there are a couple of things with it. First of all, it was essentially just rehashing the old 9-inch sort of black and white screen It didn't really bring much additional power to, say, the Macintosh SE. It was very, very, similar in that regard. They went backwards in that, once again, they had a power supply that needed, you would need to alter it if you wanted to have it either as 110 volts or 120 volts or 220, 240 volts. So that they kind of, it was a bit of a retrograde step in that regard. But what they did do is they brought the manufacturing costs way, way down on this one. And that allowed them to sell this as the first sub $1,000 Macintosh. So you could buy one of these.
Only the built to order option if you excluded the hard drive.
That's exactly right. So, and I have one. Which actually is the model that came without the hard drive, which was sort of amazing because I'd never seen one before. But I managed to pick one up relatively recently. But it was, what was it, $9.99? Yeah, that's it. It was $999. And that was for the 1 megabyte version with just the floppy drive and no hard drives. But what it did do is it brought the Classic, or brought a Macintosh into the price range of a lot of people that couldn't afford it before. And the Classic was actually incredibly successful for that reason. Are we going to
talk about the fact that there's Macintosh 2 picture on the Macintosh Classic page?
Yeah, I know. There's Classic 2 picture on the Classic. It's just it's terrible. We need to write a letter. From the perspective of a repair person, the Macintosh Classic and Classic 2 are now an absolute nightmare. They have bad capacitors on the analog board. They have leaky capacitors on the logic board, which means that you need to get them both recapped. And then there are other things like the octo coupler thingy, which is failing, and various other bits and pieces. And I am getting so many of these getting sent to me now, and they are requiring more and more repair. So
yeah, and the longer that you put off repairing a machine like this or the SE30 or Mac 2, the more difficult it is, because that corrosion is just getting more time to seep in, cause some damage between the layers of the board, and what would have been a pretty easy repair a few years ago will just get worse as time goes on.
With the Mac Classics that I get now, and I'm getting a lot of them, when I get Mac Classics, I'm generally finding probably 25% of them are not fixed just by recapping. They're needing, they're needing other work done to them as well, as they particularly on the analog boards. The good thing about the Macintosh Classic is because they were in schools, they were in a lot of people's homes. Whoa!
My goodness!
Patrick,
thank you, Patrick.
Clearly likes beige. Okay, there's a set there. That's it. Just for everyone, they just need to know Patrick likes the beige. So.
Mike and I had the pleasure of meeting Patrick at the recent VCF, and yes, they enjoy beige computers and enjoy computers in general. Thank you very much for the kind donation to the channel, sir. We can pay our rent this month.
And thank you very much for your use of the word fortnight. For people who aren't aware of that, it is every 2 weeks. So it's a single word for that.
For you.
And it's not the game. That's spelt differently.
No, thank goodness. We don't allow those on the Apple stream anyway.
Yes, that's right. So, because they bypass the payment system. Anyhow, the great thing about the Macintosh Classic is because there are so many out there, because they were in schools and often large amounts of them getting sold, sort of in big batches, they do turn up for quite cheap. So this is obviously one of the reasons why I get so many of them. There are lots of them out there, people wanting to get into the collecting, or if they're wanting to play games on the old 9-inch black and white screen, that sort of thing. The Macintosh Classic is one way to do it. But just be aware that, they're going to need restoration work.
Now, as far as these machines, we talked about some of them being very collectible and so on and so forth, but I think Bruce would echo this. A word of warning to anybody buying, whether it's an SE, I don't care if it's SE30 also, or a Mac Classic, be very careful, because if you see some of these on eBay for a few $100s because people are silly, you could spend all that money and it's going to arrive on your doorstep, and you could have a completely shot logic board, completely shot analog board. In the case of a Mac Classic, I see these all the time for $200, $300. You'd be kind of silly to buy one at that price, at least here in the US, because they are pretty common, and they will require some cost to get going again. you could easily spend $100 having somebody recap the logic board. So just keep that in mind. Not telling you what to spend your money on or anything, but these machines, especially the classics, they look nice, and then you turn them on, and you're like, ooh, why am I getting a checkerboard?
And you really cannot expect a Macintosh Classic that hasn't been recapped to work anymore. You might get lucky, but you will probably find that if someone's selling on eBay, you're either going to see a photo of a checkerboard, or they're not going to show you any photos of it working at all, and they'll just sell it as untested. And of course, the big problem with the Classic is they were using batteries in them. A lot of them were using batteries in them that didn't last as long. So if you say an original Macintosh SE or even a Mac 2 that might have had the original Maxell batteries soldered into them, there's a very good chance that those original Maxells are still okay, or they might still have some voltage, but certainly haven't exploded yet. But inside the Classic, the batteries they were using in them, very high chance of them exploding. So if you're buying one that's untested with no photos of the inside, expect the worst.
Yeah, don't. Yeah, there was a SE30 I picked up recently. It was like a make on offer type thing. I think they wanted $50, and I knew it was going to be trashed because what are the odds if you're going to find a good one? Went down there, picked it up, opened it in front of them, and just the rust particles just fell out of the case because the battery had exploded, eaten into the rust. I did do some repairs on it. The board is actually in the other room. Haven't gotten a chance to keep going on that yet, but it's just like these batteries, whether it's the original Mac, which actually had the door on the back so you could take the corrosion out, but a lot of the batteries were internal. They were hard to get to on these compact machines. So you really want to watch out for that, because if there's not a picture of the insides, there's probably a good chance that battery is either hanging on for dear life or just has exploded, and you just got to take that risk.
I get quite a lot of people sort of just contacting me, just general chit chat, because obviously you do the live streams or whatnot. And, I might just get someone that contacts me through Facebook Messenger or something like that, saying, hey, I'm going to go pick up a Macintosh Classic. Can't wait to see what's inside. And then, and then you see the photos later on of the rust all around the side. Yeah. So there's a lot of them. Yeah, there's a very, very high likelihood. So, all right. So I am going to now jump across to our little friend here. So West Germany battery juice. Yeah. So it would be remiss of us not to mention the LC family of computers. So this, originally brought out in 1990, the Macintosh LC stood for low cost, and it was designed as a low cost option for people who wanted to have color. And they really were aiming at the home and school market with these. Let's see, what price did these sell for when they first came out? There we go.
I think they were just over 2,000. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So
still pretty expensive because you had to buy a monitor too.
Yeah, that's right. And this is the one that's showing here is the 12-inch monitor with a really weird resolution on it, whatever it was, 512 by 384 or something.
And you know why? You know why that's weird resolution?
I do, but I'm going to let you say why.
So one of the designs for this machine early on, I believe, was to also say, look, you guys in these schools and institutions who love our Apple II computers, we want you to buy this Macintosh. And these people were like, well, why? Because we'd have to rebuy all the software, and the Apple IIs just work fine for us. So the thing that Apple dangled in front of them as a carrot on the stick was, look, you can buy this Macintosh. It's going to future-proof you for a few years to come. You're going to be able to run all this new software and things, but we're going to also sell you this Apple IIe card, which is an Apple computer on a card. And you could pop that into the slot on this machine, and you have access to a real hardware compatible Apple IIe with some caveats, of course. And the resolution of the screen that Apple produced was identical to, I think it's a doubled Apple IIe output. So, video scaling and stuff like that was expensive to do and difficult to do especially with the 16 megahertz processor and half a megabyte of video memory if you were lucky. So they probably try to just make it as easy as possible for a machine like this to display any other modes that an Apple II would have done. Display. So I think that's the story behind it. I could be mixing it up, but yeah.
So, I mean, it was color, but, set your expectations accordingly. If you were going to run it at 640 by 480 resolution with the original 256K of VRAM, you were only going to get 16 colors. And if you ramp that up to 512K, you would get 256 colors on a 640 by 480 or thousands on the 12-inch screen. But it was a really, really nice looking Mac. I mean, let's face it, you've got that beautiful screen with the same contour on the front that sits on top, just all looks really neat and tidy. Wonderfully accessible case, just clip it open at the back, get access to everything you need there, the power supply, floppy drive, hard drive, logic board, RAM, VRAM, everything's just really accessible. So it's a really nice bit of design, even down to the little, on the original LC, the fan and the speaker, which you could just clip up as a single piece. So, a very nicely made computer. And it was available, if we see here, as a dual floppy option, or that left floppy could have a little cover on it and have a hard drive there instead. So you could have it as a dual floppy or as a floppy and a hard drive. In the later version of this, they then remodeled the case and actually blocked out the hole for the second floppy, because it got to the point where everyone was just going with the hard drive version.
I could swear that I have an LC with the floppy drive hole there that's filled in with the plastic bezel. I have no idea where the heck it is.
Well, I have one of each. So I have one where there is no hole. There's no hole at all, not even covered with a bezel. And then the other one I have has the hole, but it's covered with the little plastic bezel thing there. So
I love all the suggestions we're getting for L.
Yeah, what I will say about it is they do also have the surface mount electrolytic caps on them. That's all of the LCs. LC 1, 2, 3
leaky capacitor.
3+. They've all got leaky caps on them, and so they will all need to be done. But having said that, I have not yet come across an original LC that I haven't been able to get back up and working again. So that's a good thing. They have the 68020 CPU, which is the same as
it's Mike's favorite.
As the Mac
his favorite is 68,000. I'm sorry.
And what I will also say is that the LC will run 608 on it, and it will run it quite zippy. So just keep that in mind. You're not going to want to put like 7.5 on them or something like that, but they will still run 608, and they're quite zippy under 608. So yeah, from a collector's point of view, if you can get hold of one, they're a nice one to have. They're a nice looking little unit. They do need a battery in them to run properly, and they do need VRAM in them to run properly. They do have some RAM soldered on the board, but they don't have any VRAM soldered on the board. Unlike the LC3, I think the LC2, you need VRAM sim as well. Mm-hmm. The LC3 has some VRAM on the board.
They all look very similar except for the markings on the front, and there are Performa variants of these. They were just bundled with the monitor with a slightly different name, 400, 410, 430, something like that, different name. So if you're looking up these machines, you go, oh, that looks like an LC, but it has a different name. Just do a search. Could be a Performa, could be a Quadra. They could be the same. They could be a bit different.
Yeah, you will see with a lot of these, like say, what's that, Performa 200, if I click on that here, there you'll actually, it'll often, it'll show you the also known as names here. So it's saying a Classic 2, but it's also known as a Performa 200. Now we did skip over the SE30, just obviously make mention of the fact that it was a compact Mac shape, but it had an awful lot of power inside it for the compact Mac. So it was, and they are extremely collectible now. They are very expensive. One sold here in Australia recently for, I think it was $1,600 on eBay. Yeah, I know. And that was, I don't think it had even been recapped, but it was complete. It was the computer. It was shown as working. It was the computer, the keyboard, and the mouse. There might have been some software with it as well. But yeah, $1,600 for an SE30. I mean, I think that's ridiculous. I would never spend that much money. But it just gives you an idea of how much people want to get hold of an SE30. I think mainly because they like the fact that you can take it up to 128 megabytes of RAM, and with the cost of RAM these days, it's not a stretch. I mean, you can go out,
which is a ridiculous amount of memory, though. Still,
I mean, what are you going to do with it? Use Photoshop on it? I mean,
I want to run soft PC on my Mac SE30.
So, but anyhow, look, they're a very collectible computer, the SE30. So, I would recommend if you can get hold of one, grab one. And I don't think you're likely to see it devalued, but you will need to get the logic board recapped. Shall we move to the Quadras?
Oh boy!
So,
isn't that one from Jurassic Park?
That's the one from Jurassic Park. So this
a wild
is
J
where,
appears.
Apple introduced a new CPU. Up until this point, the fastest computer you could get was the Macintosh 2FX, which had a 68030 CPU in it. And then out came the Quadra 700 and the Quadra 900 at the same time. I ran about the same time, I think. And they had the 68040 CPU in it, and it was a big jump in speed.
And they were expensive.
And I mean, it's not just a matter of looking at the megahertz, because this is 25 megahertz. The fact that it was an 040 made a really, really big difference to it. And I can tell you from someone who actually, went through that change professionally, where we had 030 machines and then we upgraded with 040, it was extraordinary. It was a huge jump. So the Quadra 700 priced at $6,000. So, we are talking about a top of the line machine here. And I think you could even upgrade the 2CI with a new logic board to make a 2CI a Quadra 700. Does that ring a bell? Was that something that you could do? Oh, Steve's muted. Steve's muted.
They did have an upgrade available, I believe. You could put, because the Quadra 700 board also had a PDS slot that you could put a PowerPC card in. So the upgrade path was, you put a Quadra 700 in your 2CI rather, because it has the monitor port. The 2CX does not have the cutout in the case for that.
Cutout. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But and then they could be like, shove a PowerPC chip in there. Mike and Jay, get your butts on here. Come on.
Yeah.
Show yourself.
We can't get a word in edgewise, so there's no point.
I'm shutting up intentionally. There you go. Mike, please talk.
That'd be a first.
Oh no, it's Grudy. He came on and went. He's eating food. Mike, please regale us of your Quadra knowledge. See, I give him an opening.
Quadra knowledge in the chat.
Oh.
So I would actually completely and totally disagree with that statement about the 700 being barely faster than the 2FX. I actually think it was quite significantly faster than the 2FX in practical use.
You fight!
That's I don't have it. Oh, actually, I do have a 2FX here. I could do a little side by side. I think I might.
Yeah,
we have 15 minutes left.
You got a 700?
A Quadra 700. I've got a couple.
Yeah. I upgraded from a 2FX to a 700, and truthfully, the 700 wasn't much faster, but it did use cheaper parts to achieve the same end. That was the big advantage of this. Now the 900 is a little different. That's faster.
Yeah, the 900 was quite an amazing machine. Look, one thing about the Quadra 700, really important with this, it was fitted with tantalum capacitors, not surface mount electrolytics, which means that they don't have the same issues with them. If you buy one, again, chances are if you get one, you're going to plug it in, it's going to work.
Blorp is here.
Stainer's here.
I'm Blorp.
Hello, Blorp.
The Quadra and Centris 650 are also tantalum based, so that's good to know.
And the 900 and the 950.
Yeah. Battery you got to watch out for still, but that's to be said on any of these machines.
Definitely, absolutely. But one thing I would say about the Quadra 700 is, thanks to its cameo in Jurassic Park, they have become really, really collectible. And so you are likely to find yourself paying some pretty silly money for a Quadra 700 if you try and get one. Everyone seems to want one. So
and that was the good Jurassic Park.
Yes.
How much they make now?
Back in my day, the Jurassic Park had Macintoshes in it.
Jay has watched the most recent one, and he loved it.
He kept raving about it.
Bullshit.
So I realized we only have 14 minutes left of the show, and we got some more years to cover here. But
we can stop whenever we want because we can always turn this into a two-parter.
Yeah, I think we should do we should exclude the power books because that's a whole other discussion.
Power PC next week.
So let's talk. Let's go. What's in under 1992?
So I one thing we should mention. Okay, Quadra 950 really should mention that one because it was.
If you have one, send it to me. If they're not worth anything, just
They was such a powerhouse. So first of all, they had 16 RAM slots on them, so you could actually install 256 megabytes of RAM in them. So which is just quite.
Danny, you could stream for after we go. That's fine.
Quite an extraordinary thing. They are absolutely massive, and they are also very, very hard to find. They're very hard to get hold of. Again, if you're wanting to get one of these in your collection, it's going to cost you a fortune. Things to look out for are obviously making sure that these bevels are still intact. Nice if you can get one with the key. Incidentally, what the key does is it disables the keyboard. So what that meant is if this was running as a server, you could get it all up and running. You could then lock it. It would leave the computer running, but it would mean that people couldn't come up and use the keyboard and mouse to mess around with it. So you kind of locked it down so that it couldn't actually be used once it was up and running. A lot of people think that that's actually the power switch on the front, but it's not. It just locks the keyboard out.
Okay.
So anyhow, Quadra 950, massive. You need a huge amount of space to store them, but they've got these incredibly massive power supplies. They've got the tantalum caps so they don't leak. Power supplies often do need recapping, and they've got lots of expandability. So really good one for the collectors. So highly recommend getting one of those if you can.
The 2VI and the 2VX are the last models in the Macintosh 2 series. The 2VX came out right after the 2VI, correct? And that was where you get.
I think they were released.
Where the anecdote
together.
of the 2VX comes out. I think it was like a few months apart. Was it?
No, I thought they were actually released as a duo, but I could be wrong about that.
No. What was the anecdote of the you've been 2VX'd? I always get that mixed up.
I'm not actually sure. Sorry, what was that?
I've never heard that before.
Yeah, it was. Oh boy, hold on. Let me see.
No, I have
okay. That's what it was. The Centris 650 was released 4 months after the 2VX for $250 less, rendering the 2VX obsolete. So you've been 2VX'd was like you've been screwed.
There are some things that I would say about the 2VX, 2VI from a collectability point of view, though. I'd say if you are a collector and you wanted to get hold of them, first of all, they are the last of the Macintosh 2 range. So there is some historical significance to them. The 2VI and 2VX were the first desktop computers, as opposed to towers, the first desktop computers that had a spot for a CD-ROM drive. So that's, again, we're showing, we're having advancements there in computers.
With a caddy drive.
With a caddy drive. And they also had the case, which was then used by the 650. So it had that plastic at the front and the metal case at the back there. So they were kind of like, it was a bit of a dawn of a new era, I suppose, from a design perspective with the Mac computers. The 2VX was the faster one, the 2VI the slower one. 2VI was never sold officially in the US, but they were sold here. And they're a good one to get started with collecting because there are a lot of them around.
Can I have one, Bruce?
Yes, you can. I've got two. So
I just want the badge.
Yeah, I can send you the badge. Yeah, no, I won't.
The problem is
if you send me something to put in place of it. So
I'll send you a Newton to shove in there. How about that?
the problem is they have the same case as about half of the rest of the Macs from the late 90s.
Yeah, that's right.
That's why I just want the badge.
Historical significance. That's the point. Yeah. So, and of course, they were quite interesting from a design perspective. Once you open them up, the power supply you lift up, and then the section that held the hard drives and CD-ROM drive and that sort of opened out backwards. They were actually quite a nice design for for accessibility and stuff like that. Okay, so what's next? I'll let you choose. Oh, we really should mention the AV computers, shouldn't we? Don't you think?
So yeah, I have a lot to say about these machines, but essentially the 660 AV and the Quadra 840 AV were two machines that Apple introduced as part of their whole multimedia extravaganza. And I used to have the folder up here with the press slides and everything, but essentially these use special digital signal processor chips on the logic board for these 68K based machines. This is pre-PowerPC, to actually look at video coming in from the video ports, audio coming in, and you could make recordings and take still images from video feeds and stuff like that. Really pretty advanced stuff for a 68K machine. And of course, a year later, the PowerPC stuff was just about to come out. So anything that these machines did with all those special processors added onto the boards, which made these machines very expensive, they could do a lot of the time, was sort of superseded by the 601 chips. Although they weren't the fastest machines, they could actually process video and decode stuff that these machines couldn't. But those go for a pretty penny, especially the 840 AV. It's a very collectible one for whatever the heck reason. It's very similar to the Quadra 800, which is a nice machine, but this 840 AV topped out at 40 megahertz, which I believe was the fastest non-PowerPC 68K chip that Apple shipped in their desktops.
Do they have any technical issues that might require some restoration, Steve?
Well, if you have 5 years and the idiot with the soldering iron, you might be able to get one to work if it had leaking capacitors. But there are two revisions of the boards of the 840 AV. One is brown, one is green. I believe brown is the earlier one. And they are a nightmare to find broken traces on, even with the microscope. So there's one on eBay for about $400 right now, and the bottom is all rusted. I can guarantee you that battery ain't looking good.
But from the perspective of someone who got a Quadra 840 AV at the studio that he worked at the time, I can tell you that they were awesome, and I love them. Apart from the very annoying way that you have to put RAM in them, where you quite literally you take the case off, then you take a little clippy thing out from the bottom, then you remove all the new bus cards, then you undo a screw on the back of the board, then you take the power supply plug out, and then you take the power buttons out and restart buttons, and then you pull the board
and the speaker
slightly, and the then you flip. Actually, no, the speaker could stay there, and then you could flip it over. You flip it over. And then you got access to the RAM. And so upgrading the RAM on them was an absolute pain in the backside, which is a real kind of a retrograde step when you were thinking about things like the Quadra 900 or 950 or even like the 660 AV. They were so accessible. And these ones, they sort of took a lot of that away. But other than
you just put the RAM in, and then when you assemble it together and it does the sad Mac chime, you just throw it out. That's all.
Yeah, that sounds like an absolute nightmare.
Yeah.
Now, I should also just make special mention of the 660 AV case size, which of course was the same as the 610 and then later the 6100. A few computers use that same case. And it was, a kind of a nice case. You might have
extra large pizza box.
Extra large pizza box. That's right. But one of the worst things about those cases is once you take the cover off, you actually take the power button off as well. Well, you take the part that makes the power button accessible.
My finger is hurting, Bruce, when you're talking
about.
And
then you end up with this little piece of flat white plastic. If you've got the case off and you want to switch it on, you got to try and if you've got a pencil or something, you're fine. But if you're trying to do it with your finger, you're guaranteed to do yourself a mischief.
There's jagged metal all surrounding that button. And what's interesting is on the DOS compatible version of the 6100 series, the power button actually has silkscreen out that says on off next to it, because people who may have been buying a PC were so used to having a button for the floppy disk. Oh, I could eject the floppy disk by pushing the button. And so people would push that button and shut off the machine and go, what happened?
Yes, indeed. Well, I'm looking at the time now. I reckon we can probably
Yeah, I think next week we'll catch up on the Color Classic and go.
Unless we think of something else to talk about.
But this will be postponed to another rain delay game or whatever.
Yeah, this is our couldn't think of anything else to talk about stream. So if anyone's got any ideas for topics for next week, please put them in the chat.
Or we have a Discord, and you can go ahead on the Discord there. And you could suggest things, which is awesome. If you also want to suggest things for our little Eep Quack game, which we haven't done in a while because we have no suggestions, please put them in Discord. We will get to them. There's a lot of cool stuff that we've done in the past, a lot of laughs that we've shared. So,
indeed.
we do have a website also, mac-yak.com, which is a great website for some of the articles that we put on there. If you're looking for troubleshooting or you want to learn more about these older systems, tinkerdifferent.com is another great website, and everyone's falling asleep on the banners here. Falling asleep. I'm putting up the things, huh? I have to do it myself, don't I? There's the thingamajig here. That's gosh darn it. There you go. There's the Tinker Different.
My arms.
There's the Mac Yak. Yeah. And there's the thingamajig. we also have a Discord. Please go to the Discord there if you want to chat with us. Some of us stick around, others just don't know what Discord is, leave it closed, and then fall asleep. It was too early on that. But anyway, anybody doing anything exciting this coming week that you want to talk about?
Yeah, I'm getting the windshield fixed on my car.
Okay, excellent. Jay? Okay. Bruce?
Are you going to actually stream that this time on your channel?
You can't talk, is muted.
You're muted. Unmute.
Probably not, but I'll be working on it.
Oh, come on. It's not fair. Not fair. Okay. How about
Dana,
you,
what are you doing?
Oh, no. How about you, Dana?
I just got the last 2 drives from my X-Raid, so I'll be hopefully working on that.
Ooh,
You going to stream that?
cool.
No.
Dana's actually going to do something.
Huh?
Well, he's not
stream it.
streaming it.
Grady, I cannot tell what the hell you are saying.
Is my microphone that bad?
Take the microphone out of your beard.
It basically sounds like the microphone's in another room.
Well, the microphone's gotten to this cheap headset somewhere. I don't know where
What
it is.
machine are you on? What machine
Just
are
when
you
you
on?
think his audio can't get any worse, he's like,
Use the built-in
Guys.
microphone, for crying out loud.
That's a
Yeah,
challenge.
let me fix that.
You have 5 more seconds to tell us what you're doing. 5, 4.
Okay, can you hear me?
That's
Yay!
way better.
Yeah. This has some kind of weird microphone, and
Yeah, we could guess.
Yeah. But yeah, what were we talking about?
What do you got
all right,
coming up?
next.
Oh yeah, right. Yeah, I'm going to be filming part 5 of the world's fastest iMac G4 this weekend, and probably do some more editing on the other stuff I filmed over in June with Colin, and just see where it takes me.
All right, you
Which
better
part?
do it. I'm slightly beating you in subs for now, so
Yeah, I know.
just slightly. Oh gosh. I will be imaging more of these discs. This Mac Snap disc is a upgrade disc for a add-on card made by Dove Systems. This does not read correctly, so sad Mac on that. However, if you have one of those discs, let me know. Somebody will be sending me some equipment to do more of these things, so that's what I'll be up to, and we'll go from there. Ooh. Yeah, I think Dave is right. Time to end the stream. We're getting a bit silly.
Yeah.
But Prada says goodnight. We all say goodnight, and we'll see you here not next week, but the week after.
In a fortnight.
Oh, goodness. Good night, everybody.
Cut it off now. Cut it off now.
Bye. Thanks for watching. Somebody click the damn button.
Click the button.
Somebody changed it.